Okay, in section 1 I want to show you how to use the question bank. This is basically your big list of resources that you can then use in all of your quizzes, all your different types of questions that can be built into any quizzes that you choose. We access the question bank from the Maintain menu, and it displays as a simple list of questions. You can see across the screen here the fields that are shown are the main subject, the question itself, or as much of it as is possible to be seen in the space provided, the answer, whether or not there's a file associated with the question, for example a picture or a sound clip, when it was last used in a quiz, and then a couple of other status fields, locked and retired, which I'll speak about later. At the top of the screen we can see there's a set of filter options which determines what the list contains. So for example, at the moment we're just looking at basic questions, i.e. those questions that have a written question and answer, no pictures or sound clips associated with them. If we wanted to add the picture files, or picture questions should I say, into the list, we just include that tick box and picture questions now start to appear in the list along with the basic questions. Underneath the list here we can see the paging system. This shows currently that 544 questions are found, matching the filter, and we're showing the first 20 of those, questions 1 to 20. You can scroll through the pages by simply clicking the up and down buttons. That takes you to the start of the list, that takes you to the end of the list. Okay, so just to look at how we set up some filter options then. As you can see at the moment we're looking at basic and picture questions. What if we wanted to filter by a subject? We were interested, for example, in history questions, history and politics questions. We simply switch the subject option on and then select the subject that we're interested in from the drop down list. So now we can see that these questions here, they're all history and politics questions. The reason why you're seeing a couple of geography questions listed is because they're also classed as history questions as a secondary subject. We'll look at that in a few moments' time. Now what if we wanted to home in a little bit more on the specific questions that we were interested in? We have the ability to find a keyword or phrase within the question or the answer. So as it stands here, I'm going to be looking for something in the question but not in the answer, and I'm going to type the word British. Seems quite appropriate for history and politics. And you will notice then as I start to type, the question list automatically rebuilds itself to match the phrase or word that I'm typing in. So you can see here that just 6 questions have a match to the word British in the question. 2 of them are picture questions and 4 of them are basic questions. Okay, so now dealing with specifics of what the questions contain. If we wanted to add a new question in, all we have to do is click the Add button down here, and that opens up a template into which you can add your details. So, for example, I'm going to add in a new history question, history and politics question, and it's just going to be a basic question, and I'm going to say who is the Prime Minister? Provide the answer and save the question. Okay, well first of all you can see that that question doesn't appear in the list when we return to it because it doesn't include the word British. Okay, but if we were to change that to include the word prime, then we'll see that our question now does appear. What we could do is add the word British into our question and return our filter to the British setting, and now you see the new question that we've added is included in our list. Okay, so what we're basically showing here is that with these simple tools at the top of the list here, we can fairly easily home in on the question or questions that we might be interested in. This might be particularly useful if you're adding a new question and you're not sure whether or not previously either the same or a very similar question has already been added to your list. So to avoid duplicates, that might be a way to filter your list and view it easily. Okay, so once you've got a question in there, with the one that I've just added there, you can edit it, which means you can just go in and change any of the details, change its type if you wish, add a secondary subject. So this is what we were talking about earlier, where subjects can be either primary or secondary. And I'm not going to do anything there, I'm just going to leave that as it is. Okay, you could also remove the question incidentally by clicking the remove button, but I'm not going to do that now. So, what I now want to show you is that over here on the right hand side, a number of these questions are locked. That means that you can't edit or remove them. If one of those is selected, the edit and the remove buttons are switched off. And the reason they're locked is because they haven't been added by me or by the user. So in this case, where I added this question here, you can see it's not locked. But these questions are locked because they weren't added directly by myself. They were imported into QuizTime. The questions were bought from Teardrop Software and they were imported into this list for use in quizzes. And obviously this is a massive time-saving opportunity for venues. Rather than having to devise all their own questions and check them and do all the details that you'd need to do to reliably question your audience, you can actually buy ready-made and tested questions from Teardrop Software, import them directly into your system and then use them immediately in your quizzes with the confidence that they are checked and reliable. So what I'm going to show you now is how you would import questions into your database. Okay, I'm just going to close the question bank for a moment, and off the supervisor menu there is a utilities section, and the sub-menu in there includes an import function. So if I click that, this simple screen opens. Now, on my desktop, I'll just return to the desktop now, I've actually got an order that I've bought from Teardrop Software here. It's a folder that I've got on the desktop, and when I open it I can see it contains an Excel or a CSV file, which are the details of the order, and then supporting files if there are any. So there's videos, sounds and pictures. There will be some, oh no, there aren't any pictures, there are sounds. This is a sound round, that's right. Okay. The actual order file itself, as I say, is an Excel CSV file. When we open it, which you don't need to do incidentally, but I'm just doing this to show you what it contains, is basically a file that has some coding information which allows the system to reliably detect who bought it and whether or not it's valid, and then the questions themselves. Supporting these questions, you can see that there are MP3 file details, file name details, and these were the files that we saw in the sounds folder here. Okay, so coming back to QuizTime, I'm now going to get that order file by clicking the relevant button from the desktop. There's the folder, order QT00013, and then I'm going to select the CSV file and click to open it. What it's telling me here is that the date or the owner of the file is incorrect. Now, this is the system that Teardrop Software use in order to verify that files are being used by the people that have bought them and they're not being pirated. So what you have to do is match the date and you see if you put the correct date in, which will be provided by Teardrop Software, then the validation checks pass. What you can now do is simply click the import button and you'll be invited to import those questions into your database. So here we go. It's quite happy. It's telling me 10 questions have been imported and no duplicates have been rejected, which is good news. So now if we return to our question bank, these are all music questions, so I'm going to go and put a music filter on there. I'm going to turn basic questions off and I'm going to turn sound questions on. Now basically there are 11 questions here. There was one that was already included in the list that I didn't show you earlier, but these are the 10 questions here that have just been imported directly. And as you can see, as I said earlier, they're all locked because they're imported questions, so you don't have the option to change them, update them. They're fixed. What we can do here though is we can, and this is the same with any question, irrespective of whether it's imported or otherwise, and whatever type it might be, is we can view it. So if we view this question, what we see here is the question itself, the answer, the file name of the associated file, and then we have this little media player file here that allows the either the picture, if that's what it is, or in this case the sound clip, to be previewed. If I click this button here, then we see that the sound clip is played, so you can then check that and make sure that you're comfortable, happy with it, and you know what you're providing to your audience. The same would be true if there was a picture. I'll show you that shortly. Now then, if we go back to our original list of options, which was history and politics, what I'll just show you now is that when we view a picture question, very similarly, you've got the question, the answer. In this particular example, there's some answer information. And this basically, because of the nature of the question, it's asking for a century. The correct answer is the 16th century, but you can supplement your audience with the specific details that this painting on the Sistine Chapel was actually completed between 1508 and 1512, part of the 16th century. That's quite a handy tip to have, if you wish, to supply to your audience whilst the quiz is in progress. Then you've got the file name, and then we can see the picture itself. So that's what your audience will see, and that's the question that associates with that picture. You'll see this view button on various screens in QuizTime, and whenever you see it, you know that clicking it will bring up the question in full detail, including any supporting files that it might have. Okay, so that's the question bank. It's hopefully a very simple and straightforward system to use. Adding questions yourself, straightforward process. Importing questions from Teardrop software, fairly effortless. And once these questions have been built into your database, then they're available for you to use when you start building your quizzes. And that's what we'll look at in section 2. Thank you.